The first splash was cold, sharp, and humiliating, and it landed across her dark blue dress like a public verdict. The red wine spread quickly, staining silk and dignity at the same time, while laughter erupted around the table as if cruelty were a form of entertainment. In that moment, standing under crystal chandeliers in one of New York's most exclusive private dining halls, no one recognized that the woman they had just mocked held the power to end everything they had spent decades building. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a second to pause. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that character matters more than status, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Her name was Victoria Hale, a 42-year-old CEO known in boardrooms across the United States for turning struggling companies into global leaders. She had grown up in a modest Ohio neighborhood, raised by a single mother who worked double shifts at a hospital and taught her that respect was non-negotiable, no matter how powerful or powerless someone seemed. Victoria carried those lessons into adulthood, into Harvard lecture halls, sleepless startup nights, and eventually into the corner office of a technology firm valued in the billions. But that evening, none of that mattered. To the people seated at the long marble table, she was simply a woman invited as a courtesy guest to finalize a partnership they believed was already guaranteed. Across from her sat Brandon Whitmore, a 24-year-old heir to the Whitmore Holdings empire. He had inherited confidence without earning humility, wealth without learning restraint. His parents, Charles and Meredith Whitmore, had built a manufacturing giant over 3 decades, and now they were chasing their biggest expansion yet, a $500 million strategic deal that would secure their legacy. Victoria's company was the final signature they needed. Yet from the moment she arrived, Brandon treated the dinner like a stage, leaning back in his chair, smirking at her calm posture, making exaggerated gestures meant to draw attention. The wine incident was not an accident. It was a careless flick of the wrist, followed by feigned surprise and a room full of indulgent laughter. Brandon's parents laughed too, not loudly, but comfortably, the kind of laughter that signals approval without words. No one stood up. No one apologized. The servers froze, unsure whether to intervene. Victoria remained still, feeling every eye on her, feeling years of hard-earned authority reduced to a spectacle in seconds. Inside, the humiliation burned, but so did something else, something steadier. She thought of her mother, scrubbing her hands raw after long shifts. She thought of the first time a venture capitalist dismissed her because she did not look like a CEO. She had learned long ago that dignity did not require noise. Slowly, she reached for a napkin and gently pressed it against the stain, her movements controlled, her expression unreadable. The laughter faded into awkward murmurs when they realized she would not react the way they expected. The dinner continued, strained and artificial. Brandon kept smirking, enjoying the silence he believed he had conquered. His parents exchanged satisfied glances, confident that power sat on their side of the table. What they did not see was Victoria quietly observing everything, the arrogance, the entitlement, the lack of basic respect. She had not come to be admired. She had come to decide. As dessert was served, memories surfaced of her early career failures, of nights when she slept in her office, of moments when quitting felt easier than proving people wrong. Those experiences had shaped her into a leader who valued culture as much as profit. The deal on the table was massive, yes, but so was the cost of aligning with people who treated others as disposable. She understood that contracts bind more than companies, they bind values. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the glass walls of her Manhattan office as Victoria reviewed the final agreement one last time. Her legal team waited quietly, already sensing something had shifted. The numbers were flawless. The opportunity was historic. Yet the image of that wine-soaked dress and the laughter behind it refused to fade. With a steady hand, she closed the folder and made a single call that would ripple through an entire industry. Within hours, Whitmore Holdings received a formal notice. The partnership was cancelled. No negotiation. No revisions. Just a clean, decisive end to a $500 million future they had counted as certain. Confusion turned into panic. Phones rang. Emails flooded in. Charles Whitmore demanded explanations, convinced there had been a misunderstanding. Meredith insisted they could smooth things over. Brandon laughed it off at first, until he realized the laughter around him was gone. News spread quickly, as it always does when powerful people fall unexpectedly. Investors asked questions. Board members grew restless. Stock prices trembled. The Whitmores requested an emergency meeting, finally acknowledging the woman they had dismissed. Victoria agreed, not out of obligation, but out of clarity. She believed in accountability, and sometimes accountability required presence. When they met, the tone was unrecognizable. The confidence had drained from their faces, replaced by forced politeness and visible regret. Brandon sat quietly, no longer amused, confronted for the first time with consequences that money could not erase. Victoria listened as excuses formed and collapsed, as apologies hovered but failed to land with sincerity. She did not interrupt. She did not raise her voice. She simply explained, calmly and firmly, that respect was not a negotiable clause. She spoke about leadership as a reflection of character, about how a company's culture mirrors the behavior it tolerates. She explained that no amount of profit justified partnering with people who laughed at humiliation. The words were not angry, but they were final. When she stood to leave, the room felt smaller, heavier, as if something intangible had been taken with her. The fallout was swift. Brandon faced internal consequences that stripped away his illusion of invincibility. Charles and Meredith were forced to confront the environment they had enabled. The canceled deal became a case study in business schools, not for its financial implications alone, but for its moral lesson. Meanwhile, Victoria returned to her work, channeling the same discipline and integrity that had carried her this far. Months later, her company announced a new partnership, one with a smaller firm led by a diverse team known for ethical practices and community investment. The deal was not as large on paper, but it resonated across industries. Employees felt proud. Customers felt connected. Growth followed naturally, rooted in trust rather than fear. If this story is touching something inside you right now, please remember this moment. Stories like this remind us that quiet strength can reshape loud rooms, and that integrity often speaks loudest when it says no. As the year closed, Victoria attended a charity event in Chicago, far from the chandeliers and cruelty of that night in New York. She watched young professionals mingle nervously, reminding her of herself years ago. She smiled, knowing that success did not have to come at the expense of compassion. The wine stain from that night was long gone, but the lesson remained vivid, etched into the paths of everyone involved. Before this story ends, I have one special request. Please comment the word respect if you believe dignity should never be optional, no matter who you are or how powerful you become. In a world that often rewards arrogance and excuses cruelty as confidence, Victoria Hale's choice became a quiet rebellion. She proved that self-respect can outweigh $500 million, and that sometimes the most powerful response to humiliation is not retaliation, but refusal. And for everyone who heard her story, the message lingered long after the headlines faded. True wealth is measured not by what you own, but by what you are unwilling to tolerate. If this story moved your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and stay subscribed for more stories that remind us why humanity still matters.